can just put the three of them up there. It is 4 o'clock. I call the meeting to order. Our first item is our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Vice Chair, could you read our mission statement?
The mission of the Marshall Public School District is to educate, support, and prepare all learners for success.
Thank you. Moving on to Tiger Spotlight, which would be the oath of office for elected members. It is an honor that you were elected to guide the education of our community's children. As you recite the oath of office, you assume a tremendous responsibility as a director of our school district with the duties empowered by the Minnesota legislature. This power puts you and the other members of our school board in the position of being both morally and legally responsible for equitable, quality education for every student in the district. In carrying out this responsibility, you will be asked to fulfill the roles of vision, structure, accountability, and advocacy. In providing vision, the board, with extensive participation of the community, envisions the community's educational future and then formulates the goals, defines the outcomes, and sets the course for the public schools. To achieve the vision, the board establishes a structure and creates an environment designed to ensure all students the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. Because as a board, we must be accountable to the community, we must ensure a continuous assessment of students' achievement in all conditions affecting the education of our children. As board members, we serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools to advance the vision of our schools. Furthermore, we must strive to work towards and with the superintendent and staff to lead the district toward fulfilling the vision we have created, fostering excellence for every student in areas of academic skills and knowledge, citizenship, and personal development. Having signed the acceptance of the oath of office, will you please publicly affirm your commitment by repeating the oath of office after me? If you guys would stand and raise your right hand. I swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
That I will support the Constitution of the United States
and that I will discharge faithfully the duties of the office of school board members
and that I will discharge faithfully the duty of the office of the school board member
of Independent School District 413
of Independent School District 413
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Picture? You just do it right here? 3 of them? Yeah, the 3 of them. How about this way?
Which way you do it?
Thank you, thank you.
All right, let's go right here with the tiger in the back.
Just the road on the back.
There we go.
Jeff and Pat.
We have some background music. Take your mask off. Oh, we got separated there. That's 6 feet.
Okay. There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Did that smell good enough?
Bill, need to sign this? Okay.
All righty.
Thank you. Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second. Open for discussion. Any additions? Hearing none, please vote. It is approved. Now we need nominations for the office of 2021 board chair. Motions are open. Are there any motions?
I nominate Jeff Chapman for board chair.
Are there any other motions? Nominations, sorry. And for the third time, are there any more nominations? Yes, you have a second on that?
We can just go through the process.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that nomination.
Please vote. It is approved. Now we got nominations for the office of vice chair for 2021.
I nominate Matt Coleman.
Is there any more nominations? And for the third time, are there any more nominations? Hearing none, I'll second that. Please vote. It is approved. Next one is
I meant to abstain then.
Oh, you don't have to, it's okay.
Okay.
nominations for office of school clerk for 2021. Do we have any nominations?
I'll nominate Bill Molso.
Do we have any other nominations?
Do you guys have any graduates?
Me next year.
Next year. Okay.
And the third time,
Just curious.
and the third time, do we have any more nominations? Hearing none, I will second that and we'll vote. It is approved. And then we need nominations for the school board treasurer for 2021. Do we have a nomination?
I'll nominate Aaron.
Do we have any other nominations? And for the third time, do we have any other nominations? Hearing none, I will second that. Please vote. It is approved. And then we got an action item of our meeting dates for 2021-22. We have a motion to approve them.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. It is approved. We got our approval of board committees. I'll make a motion to approve that. Need a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Are we all okay with?
Everybody okay with where they're at?
Yep.
You guys okay being students? And we'll call for a vote. It is approved. And we have a approval of the set the board of directors compensation. Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we keep them the same as they were.
Okay, do we have
Same
a
as they've
second?
been forever. I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. It is approved. Now we need to discussion of the approval of the 2020-21 revised budget.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
And it's open for discussion.
Just want to go through a few things on the budget, some of the changes from the preliminary budget. Just a reminder that the preliminary budget is basically done back in May. So there's a lot of changes there's some changes that happened. Back in May, we were hopeful to be back in regular schools, and some of those adjustments you'll see happening with COVID and everything going on. So to start from the top under the general fund expenditures, not going into a lot of detail because there wasn't some big changes there, but salaries was an increase in about 63,000. We had a couple of extra teacher days or professional development days. It was actually coded to CARES funding, but it was about $42,000 in salaries extra that we had to prepare for the hybrid and distance learning. That was prior to school starting. That made up a majority of that difference there. Under the benefits, main shift, there was about $26,000 less in health board share. Just a couple of people not taking board. Could be just a change between retirees and new employees. Purchase services, you see a decrease of $327,000. A big swing of that is there's a little over $159,000 that we pay towards SMSU for the track as part of our agreement. That was coded prior under purchase services and should be under capital expenditures. So you see the swing 327 on purchase services, and then you see a swing up on capital expenditures. A little over $159,000 is due to that. Another thing under purchase services, our activity transportation expenditures are under purchase services under the general fund. Just anticipating about $42,000 less in that expenditure this year. Under supplies, a majority of that increase in supplies is due to PPE and other COVID supplies. Was funded under CARES funding, but because we want to put it under our budget, about $268,000 of that is due to PPE and COVID supplies. And again, the capital expenditure, majority of that going up $244,000 was due to that $159,000 expenditure moved from purchase services. Under the revenue, typically I put some notes on here, but it seemed like it was a trend. A lot of it had to do with COVID and estimates that we had done in a regular year. Purchase service or participating fees, admission and concessions and facility rentals. All those are decreased due to not having that revenue coming in, mainly because of COVID distance. Our third-party reimbursement, health-related services reimbursements, factoring that will be lower this year. And daycare revenue, showing a decrease of $75,000 in revenue. That's basically a trend. We were hoping for an increase if things were back to normal. But with COVID and some of the trends we've had in our daycare revenue, we're just estimating that will be lower this year again. Under state revenue, not a lot of swings. General revenue was lower, close to $90,000. That is basically just due to being a little more conservative on our student count. We've seen just a little decrease in that from last year. Area learning is an estimate that we've used. We use kind of like the state funding. Both those are estimates that we've used prior years and trends. State special ed, we've talked about every year. We try to get that one as close as possible. Just figuring it's going to be a little less than what was anticipated from the preliminary budget, about $100,000. Going down a little bit more. Under our levy, that didn't change much at all. $8,500, it was just an adjustment. Those are usually set in stone from the original to the the revised. And then our title revenue. This is not an actual decrease. We budget what we project to spend. And we're just projecting to spend a little less than what was in the preliminary budget. If those expenditures go up, the revenue goes up with it. One thing we try to be careful there is to not spend 100% of that revenue, because we like to carry over a little bit just in case the federal funding goes down. We have those funds for another year to make up for that. And then go down just a little more is our CARES revenue. The first line or the last line, the CARES CRF. Apologize, those lines are wrong. The first line.
This should be revised though with regard to the new bill that was passed by Congress. More money coming in.
Don't know what that amount is, so we're not going to budget.
Well, the states
that
are
in.
going to get quite an increase.
Right, but I can't budget what I don't know.
K-12, but I mean, this will change once we
Yes.
get that.
Yes.
This
Yep.
will be an increase in revenue.
Correct. Overall CARES funding that we're anticipating will be spent this year of what we know is right around that 862,000. So go down just a little more, Tricia. So the total general fund expenditures from the preliminary budget, we're showing an increase of about 86,000. Total revenue increase is about 235,000. What we're losing in some of our revenue is made up with that CARES funding. So overall, showing a little better deficit spending, going in from that 581,000 to 432,000. So about a difference of $148,000. Yeah, Bill is right. The revenue will go up. I'm sure some expenditures will probably be adjusted with that. Next, I put transportation and capital expenditure next because they technically fall under general fund. So for transportation, we're showing a little less in our salary and benefits. That again is due to COVID or distance learning when we're not running the bus. Contracted services is an estimate showing a decrease in that expenditure of about $69,000. We're currently in negotiation with Southwest coaches on how to handle some of our distance learning when we're district-wide on their contracted services. Revenue, there was one piece because we'll have some extra transportation routes due to us splitting our elementary and our secondary. So we're putting some of the CARES federal funds towards that to help make up for that expenditure. That's that 91,705. So compared to the preliminary where we were looking at about a $72,000 deficit, we're now looking at approximately $107,000 excess. And we'll look at the actual fund balances in a little bit, but that's good for our transportation fund because that was getting close to the zero. So if we can hold this true, we'll show an increase this year. Capital outlay funds is broken down between capital outlay expense and our LTFM. Our capital outlay expenditures is showing just under our budget, 57,000 reduction in spending. And that's exactly that. We're just trying to reduce the spending to build up our capital outlay fund balance. LTFM, there's about 173,000 less that's been budgeted for the revise that was shifted to our construction fund. For some of those projects that fall under the LTFM, not to be confused with our actual construction project. Revenue, LTFM state aid, that was shifted, that 149,000 was shifted to debt services. Otherwise, the levy stayed the same. And under capital revenue, miscellaneous local revenue, last year there was some revenue that came in. We had some dugouts that were done, and there was a lot of donations by some different organizations that came in to help pay for those dugouts. So just anticipating that we'll have that type of a project again this year, so that's loaded. So, go down a little bit, Tricia, just overall capital expenditures and revenue. Instead of a 213,856 deficit, we're now looking at about 182,867. So that turned out a little bit better if everything holds true. If you go down just a little bit, what I did this year was I put a summary together of all three of those funds, since they are all technically under our general fund accounts. So if you go down just a little more, this is what the audit shows for our general funds together. So instead of $867,000 deficit spending between all three of the general fund accounts, we're looking at budgeting about $508,000 deficit. So again, this has a lot to do with the CARES Act funding, but also discussions just on trying to control our spending in a year that we knew that we're going to be deficit spending. Any questions about those three accounts? Okay. The next one is our food service. Not a lot of, well, there were a lot of swings, and it's a lot of it is due to COVID. Equipment, supplies, equipment, we did have to purchase a couple of ovens at the middle school. They were definitely due to be replaced, but we had to replace a couple of those with some of the, with a lot of what we're doing at the middle school here. And then also we needed to buy some racks. The racks were covered by CARES Act. The racks are so we can go around to the different rooms with breakfast this year. Then under revenue, you're going to see a lot of swings. This has everything to do with us going under our summer food service program. So we're not getting the state revenue that we had anticipated. We're not getting some of the federal source revenue broken down that we would have anticipated. It all falls under the summer food service program. So you can see an upbeat of 666,000 in revenue there. And if you go down a little bit, Tricia, you'll be able to see that the sales and other revenue decreased by 673,000, and that's because everything's free for the students this year, and so we don't have that revenue coming in. So mainly because of the supplies and the equipment, we saw a swing from the $9,000, close to a $10,000 excess to about a $100,000 deficit. When we show the fund balances, you'll be able to see that the food service can handle that deficit. We anticipate a little more of that, and we'll talk about that when we do the preliminary budget for next year. I have Mike Carlson with Taher and Warren working on a list of equipment, food service equipment, that we'd like to be able to, kind of like our LTFM, get a list so we're not surprised by having to replace something. We're all of a sudden having to replace a lot of things. We can maybe get somewhat of a schedule going. Community services. Main two swings, both in expenditures and revenue, has to do with ABE. ABE handles a lot like our state special ed. It's kind of hard to project, but we anticipate the adult basic ed expenditures increase about $36,000. We also anticipate the ABE revenue to increase about $97,000. Overall, you want to scroll right on, Tricia, there. Overall, we're only showing about a $16,000 difference, and that's an actual increase from the $43,000 excess to about $60,000 in excess in our Fund 4 community service funds. And then the last one is our debt service. No change in well, very little change in the debt service expenditures of $15. And then in revenue, levy, we had about $207,000 in revenue less than the levy. And if you see that is actually put under the other property tax credit of the $207,000. To zero each other out, we had the sale of our bonds. We received $135,000. in revenue on that, that we did not anticipate. And then our LTFM state aid, like I had said before, it's under our general ed, went from, or under our capital, went from capital to our debt service to pay on our interest. So our debt service, instead of a $49,000 excess, we're looking at about $328,000 excess in that fund. You can open that other, and we'll just look at the fund balances. You go down to the second page. A little bit, there you go. Gonna increase that a little bit. So on the bottom there, it just shows the projected ending fund balances, and it's a comparison of the final 1920 fiscal year to the 2021 revised fiscal year. Last year, we ended at about 16.5% in our general fund. Anticipated with the changes of the revised, we'll be looking at about 15.16%, about 1.3%, 1.34% less. So that's a little better than what we had anticipated. Food service, you see that decrease there. Again, we're still going to be around a 23% fund balance. So we'll have more discussion of that, more board approval, but I'd like to look at the equipment throughout the district again, make sure that we're handling that. Transportation, go from a 7.95 to a 14.55%, which is much needed in that fund if everything holds true. Community service continues to have an upswing, going from 32.86 to 33.94. Capital, overall, that's capital and LTFM, show an increase of about 7.58%. And as we look at our LTFM projects throughout the district, definitely start hitting those a little harder. And then debt service shows an actual decrease, 1.37% in fund balance. Fund balance is the expenditures, anticipated expenditures divided by the previous fund balance or the current fund balance. So like debt service shows an actual increase, excess, but the fund balance is showing a decrease. That's because the expenditures increase, fund balance stayed the same. Any questions on that? Not a whole lot of swing, but it was really one of the oddest budgets I've ever done because things are just all over the place.
Well, thank you for staying on top of it.
We were able to spend all the CARES money that we got.
The CARES Act, the CRF funds that we had to spend by December 30th, we requested and received.
Good.
Do you have any other comments? I'll go ahead and vote. It is approved. And moving on to board action, selection of candidates for interview for the position of superintendent. Motion to do that. Do I have a second?
We're gonna do that first.
Oh, let's see.
It's in a
You can have
different order
discuss-
on e-board.
You can discuss
Let's discuss it. Okay.
discuss it first, and then we'll make a vote.
All right, very good.
Decided your candidate.
I will step out.
Thank you.
Do that.
Board members, we received a total of 11 applications. Each application has been assigned a letter ID. Applicants will be referred to by their letter assignments until the final decision is made of which candidate will receive an interview. The executive committee has discussed interviewing 3 candidates. If this is agreeable to everybody? To start, I will go down the list of candidates and will ask if they should be considered further for discussion for an interview. If you would like him to be removed for consideration, we may state that. If an application is recommended for removal and you would like to keep that application for consideration, please share that and we will keep that for discussion. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion. Having reviewed all, and I know we've all done our homework with reference to that, I make a motion that we do not go through the screening of any more candidates or any interviewing. I recommend that we offer the position to Jeremy Williams. And I do that for several reasons. I've known Jeremy since his beginning of his tenure with our district as a Spanish teacher, assistant principal at the high school, assistant principal at Maytech, principal at Westside, director of curriculum and instruction here, and now acting as our superintendent the past few months. In talking to several people within the district, he is very well respected among all of our staff, among all of our colleagues. And the reason I say that, the reason I'm putting that on the table is we look at next week, the 12th, we're scheduled 8 hours of interviewing candidates with several committees, have to pay candidates for traveling and those kinds of things. There may be some other candidates who would probably be good in the position, but Jeremy's a proven person in our school district. He has poise. He's a good listener. He's a bridge builder. He's obviously worked through some heavy stuff with all of our staff. So I'm just making a motion that we offer the contract for full superintendency, a full contract to Jeremy Williams as our next superintendent. That's my motion.
I have a second.
I would second that motion.
Open for further discussion.
I have real concerns about that. With all due respect, I don't disagree with your comments about Williams. At our last board meeting, we discussed the fact that looking at applicants with a district our size made a lot of sense from a standpoint of seeing who would express interest in the position and ensuring that we are looking broadly at all candidates that would show an interest. And I feel like if we don't vet these applicants and possibly at least do interviewing of 3 individuals, that we're shirking that responsibility. It doesn't hurt us to go through a round of interviews. That's what I think we've committed to doing as board members. And I think we made that commitment to open it up for applicants. That without doing that interview process, it doesn't do any harm if the conclusion of that is to then negotiate with Mr. Williams for a contract. But I think that we did get some quality applicants that I think we need to look at, not because a decision is made now, but a decision would be made after that.
Further discussion? Okay, go ahead.
I'm just trying to think of how to say it. I would agree with Bill too. I feel like this is the most important decision we make as a board, hiring a superintendent. And I just don't, I struggle finding 3 candidates to interview that I think would be good enough for our district. Between having no experience and between being from a smaller school district. So I'm okay with Bill's motion, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I don't see anybody that will rise to the level that we're looking for. Nice candidate B to get up that high.
And that was my sense, Matt. And I clearly understand what you're saying, Sarah. And I've been through all kinds of interview processes in my life. But knowing Jeremy and knowing how well he's respected with all of our staff, that's huge. That is huge. We bring in a new body. We don't know until the rubber hits the road. Anybody can look good on paper. And I've experienced that as a principal. Some have looked good on paper and we've selected and had to dismiss.
But we don't know that if we're not even interviewing.
Pardon?
But we don't know that if we're not even interviewing anybody. You are judging them just on paper.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying, I don't think we need to go through the process. That's why I put the motion on the floor. Jeremy is a proven entity.
I don't doubt that there would be a lot of very good candidates in this pool of people that apply for this position. I guess where I come back to is there are a lot of people that want to be a superintendent of a school district. There is one candidate in this pool that wants to be the superintendent of the Marshall School District. And that makes the difference for me.
I would agree with the other comments after reviewing the pool of applicants. I was very hard pressed to find someone that matched the credentials in terms of a fit with Mr. Williams. I mean, yes, he's got limited experience with us, but it's progressive experience. It is experience, I think, that has been shown to be well respected by his peers and by those he's supervised. The remaining pool of candidates, I struggled to find three that I think would be worthy of coming here and giving of their time and certainly of our time. Your comment about those that want to be superintendents versus those that want to be superintendents in Marshall, Minnesota is a very good comment because that's quite relevant or quite apparent with a couple of these. They just want to be a superintendent somewhere.
Comments?
I'd like to make one other comment. My daughter has two children in the high school here. And she's been very appreciative of the communication from the superintendent's office on keeping everybody up, the community abreast. And that's huge. I mean, it's not just internally that he's got a great deal of respect. He has respect within the community as well. He's proven. The rest are not.
For a point of order, it just has to be a voice.
No, so in ESB, I made the update, and so now, if you go ahead and refresh, you will see that the recommendation, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the board suspends the interview process and offers the position of superintendent to Jeremy Williams.
That's correct.
So, because there was a motion and a second, we will need to act on it.
So I need to find it first.
Click join meeting.
It automatically updates on our screen. Yeah.
Do we need to clarify, is this going to be a 3-year position or 2 years from now, or do we need to clarify any of that, or?
How do we normally?
I think they just offer a superintendent contract, which is usually 3 years. You start off with a new contract at the start of.
Once it's offered, doesn't the exec usually negotiate that?
Yes, I have to negotiate a contract.
Yeah.
So I guess the point is, it's part of the negotiations, do we kill the contract of the interim and start a new superintendent contract from when we settle, or if you continue out this contract until
Or extend this one?
extend this one? I would not-
If we're
I
appointing
know
him
this will
full,
not be extended. You can't extend a existing contract.
Mr. Chair, I think before we have that discussion, I think we should come to a resolution on the motion.
Yeah, I agree.
what'd you say, Bill?
I believe we should come to a resolution on the motion on the floor before we have any conversation.
We need to take
about
action.
Contract negotiations.
Trish, could I bother you a second here, please? Oh, I see that. So this one here would be Swope, and then this one here was Mosul. So that's what take care of this down here. Okay. Okay. So we have a motion that the board suspends the interview process and offer the position of superintendent to Jeremy Williams, which has to be negotiated. Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. It is approved.
So, just because of the recommendation that was just approved, you can probably skip this one because this was the recommendation to add a meeting next Tuesday for the interviews.
Right.
So we
Yeah.
can probably.
We just dropped that. Okay. Moving on to our consent agenda, do we have a motion? Moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. It is approved. Board forum, board members, anything you'd like to bring up?
I should invite Jeremy back in. Hold on.
How's construction going?
Good.
Complain about the weather.
Do they have a roof on this building over here? Do they have a roof on Southview?
Yes.
They got this, okay.
Let's do 110. I will let everybody know, the park side, the vestibule, the bricks. We talked about putting the metal over there. I went and looked at it on Wednesday. I don't think we'd be very happy with that. So what they're gonna do is they did I call it stucco underneath. They're gonna do that over the top of the brick. I asked James from Susanner, is it gonna chip or poison or anything? And he said it shouldn't. That'll give it one. Where is it at? Parkside, on the new entrance. You look at the base of that entrance, the way they did the brick, just look at it closely and you'll understand why.
Okay.
So it should look, what he had talked about, it should look nice. We won't be able to paint it and we'll put the letters on there. So.
Okay. Anything else, board members? Moving on to discussion items, second reading of policies 601 through 606. Anybody have any comments? Second reading.
I did just share in the last board meeting that one does involve some things with curriculum and evaluating the reading progress of students and such. So we're having some conversations around the implementation of some of those things and how we're doing screenings for readers that are at risk, especially in distance learning, which has been a bit of a challenge. So, but otherwise, no major changes in any of those.
Okay. Ooh, I got an error here. Let's see what happened.
Just before you adjourn. I think I'd recommend just talking to everybody about that process.
Oh,
I was watching.
Oh, Mr. Williams, we will have to need to negotiate a contract. So
Thank you.
congratulations. We just felt as a board that you're homegrown, basically. I feel personally, anytime a superintendent change is, you lose about a year to year and a half of growth in your district just due to changes. And I guess the board's pretty happy with your work so far. So we put you up on a pedestal. Don't fall off.
I appreciate your support and I will work very hard on behalf of the district and look forward to continuing in this position.
All right. Anything else, board members? Well, it looks like I crashed my computer, so the meeting's now over. Thank you. Trish, I cannot end this.
Very end before you crash it.
Yeah, I got to the very end. It won't go to the next item.
I will take your packet back, please.